Hey everybody, welcome back to the next slide of our course. I am sure you're doing great. Let us now start with this slide. This is gonna be the very important slide. It's a cash withdrawal using a bank check. A customer comes to you and he brings you the check of your bank to withdraw the cash. It can be his own account or it can be someone else's account and he's presenting the check to you. Most importantly, it is and it has to be your bank's check because he's withdrawing the money from your account. Now, you need to understand the check and all the important features. This is a very important, very critical, and very risky transaction. So, you need to put your utmost attention towards this transaction while you're processing it. On a check, when you get it, it has to be in one piece, not torn, not mutilated, in a perfect condition. That is how a check should be. It should not have any smudges of ink on it or any other marks on it which makes it doubtful or which will not make any thing unreadable on the check. If any stains are there, with because of these stains you cannot read any of the thing written on the check, then that check will not be acceptable, or you refer to your head teller and your operations manager and follow their instructions. But that is number one. Second, you check the date on the check. As I have explained in my previous slide, a check has a validity of 6 months. The date which is written on the top of the check, from that date check has a life of 6 months. So if you received a check which has a date of 5 month old, from that date you will start counting the days and it is 180 days, 6 months, 180 days, exactly 6 months. You count 6 months. If it is the last day of 6th month, last day of 6th month, then you can process the check, withdraw the money and pay the money to the customer. If the 6 months have already crossed, if suppose if it was the sixth last day of 6th month was yesterday and it is gone, and today is the first day of 7th month, the check is stale, it is gone, it has matured, it has expired, it is called stale check. Then you can simply refuse the check without checking any other details and tell the customer, sorry sir, this check is stale now. Now there is only one way. You go back to the account holder of the check and let him change the date and get his signature. If this check belongs to the same person, it is his account, you can tell him to change the date and sign the next to the date in front of you. This is for the stale checks. Now you cannot withdraw a PDC check as well. PDC check means a future date check. Even if it is tomorrow's date, even if it is tomorrow's date, you cannot withdraw and process the check today. Let him come tomorrow. Or if the check date is after 3 months, after 6 months, after 1 year, you tell the customer to come on that date or after that date within the 6 months of the validity of the check. So this is the check date, which is very important. That is the first thing you will check about date. So when you check a date, it is always advisable to keep a lead pencil with you, not the permanent pen, not the ballpoint, a lead pencil which is erasable. With that, you just stick the date. That proves that you have already checked the date on the check. Second thing which you will check is gonna be amount in words written on the check and amount in digits. Amount in digits, suppose 6,250 cents, then amount in words has to be 6,250 cents only. Both of these things should match. Amount in words, it should match exactly with the amounts in digits written on the check. There must not be a difference of it. Let me show you a picture of a check just to explain this to you. See here, pardon me for the delay. Okay, see here, 12,345,678 only, and in digits here, 12,345,678 complete. Now this amount in digits and amount in words should match perfectly. If it does not match, then you just return the check. Okay, it is very important. Uh, you cannot pay a check which has amount in words and figures different. Now the next thing which you have to check, just a minute, let me go back to the slide here. Excuse me. If it is payable to a person, then only that person can withdraw the check. Suppose if it is payable to Mr. John, then Mr. John can only take the money out of it. If it is written cash, then anyone can take that money out of it, until and unless this check is not endorsed. Now we talked about endorsement yesterday in my previous slide, I'm sorry, that what exactly is an endorsement. Let me just explain it to you here again. Let us see. Okay, here. See, in this check is payable to Mr. Roy Ang. So it has to be paid to Mr. Roy Ang only. You cannot pay this to Mr. Michael. This check is specifically for Mr. Roy. And here, let me just show you another slide just to explain. Yeah, all of these checks are payable to Mr. Roy and he's a lucky guy. Here, if it is written cash, then you can pay cash. You can pay to anyone. Endorsement is, suppose if it is written here Mr. Roy Ang, and then Mr. Roy Ang endorses to Mr. Michael on the back of the check. He signs it on the back of the check and he tells you to pay it to Mr. Michael. But that endorsement has to be done in the bank, in front of a bank teller or in front of a bank officer. If it can be done at any time, but bank teller or any other bank officer has to verify it that this endorsement has been done in front of me and Mr. Ang has presented his ID and I have verified that it was Mr. Ang who has endorsed this check to Mr. Michael and he signed it on the back of the check and now Mr. Michael can withdraw it. This is called endorsement. So if the check is endorsed, then you pay it to Mr. Michael. If it is not, then it has to be Mr. Ang. Excuse me. If the check is payable to the company, then that check has to be deposited in a company account. A company account checks cannot be endorsed. These are very special endorsements which can only be done with by the relationship manager, mostly the corporate relationship managers, and then you need the approvals of operations manager and in some cases the branch manager. That is really a special case. So for that you just refer the customer to your head teller, but you don't normally do it. If a check is payable to a company, it has to go to the company account. That cannot be withdrawn. Only a cash check can be withdrawn. If a check is not a cross check, now let me explain the cross check to you here. Just see here these two lines, parallel lines here. These parallel lines means this is a cross check. A cross check cannot be encashed. You cannot take the money out of the account and pay cash to the bearer of this check. This cross check means this check has to be deposited into the account. This check can never be encashed. So if you receive a cross check, you don't pay the customer. You tell him we will deposit it into your account. That is a universal rule. I will show you another example of cross check. Here you see these two parallel lines which says account payee only. That means this check has to go to the account. It will be deposited into Mr. Roy Ang account. This is for the sample purpose, by the way. It will be deposited into his account. He cannot withdraw cash. So this account payee stamp, normally the companies they do it, or even if you are issuing, if somebody issues a personal check also, he can just strike two lines here, and with even he did not write account payee, still it is considered a cross check, and cross check cannot be encashed. It has to go to the account. It is for the security purpose and for the record purpose. Companies issue the cross check so that that goes to the account, and there will be a track record that in which account, and there will be a proof that we have paid to that company. So if it this also needs to be checked at the time of check payment, that if it is a cross check or not a cross check. Now, if it is a bearer or a non-bearer check, that also is an important aspect. Let me explain that to you as well. Now see here, Mr. Roy Ang, pay to Mr. Roy Ang, and then these words here are stricken off. These words are written are bearer, bearer, B-E-A-R-E-R, bearer. Bearer means whoever is holding the check. So if you have striken this off, that means it has to be paid to Mr. Roy Ang. No other person can withdraw or take this check. Suppose here, I'll show you. Yeah, see, this is one of the old specimens of a check. See here, it's written bearer or bearer. So pay to, it's difficult handwriting, can't read the name. Pay to Mr. This and or bearer. This means if this gentleman comes to the bank, he withdraws the money. But if any other gentleman also comes to the bank holding this check, since the bearer is not stricken off, that person can also take the money. But nowadays, in most cases and in most banks, the bearer check are not issued. This bearer word is not printed on the checks in most of the banks these days. But this policy, it differs from bank to bank. So you really need to read the policies and procedures of your bank and your area and your regulator, because the regulator bank in that area in that specific city or state also gives the rulings and regulations, and you need to follow those regulations there. But just for your understanding, I have explained it here so that you really know what exactly bearer is. Now, most importantly, it must have a valid signature. After checking the date, after checking amount in words and figures, and after checking the payee, who the payee is, and making sure that you're paying to the correct person and you are paying it correctly, then the other most important thing to check is signature. You need to check the signature in the system and verify it. Your signature on the check and signature in the system in your records, computers, it must match 100% exactly. It must match. If it does not match, you talk to your head teller, and then he knows what to do. He will call the customer and make sure, and then on his risk he will do it. Now with that lead pencil, you will put a tick next to the amount in words, next to the amount in digits, next to the name of the customer, and if signature is okay, there is a small stamp which you will put next to that signature. That stamp says signature verified, and you will initial it. That initial has to be done with the permanent ink. You cannot do it with the lead pencil. That needs to be done with the permanent ink. So you will put your initial on it, that you have verified the signature. You are sure that this signature is 100% okay. There must not be any alteration on the check. Suppose the date was written and then it was striken off, or customer he just erased it and he altered something. If there is an alteration on the check account holder must sign the alteration. So if there are three alterations on a check, the account holder must sign next to each alteration. If there are so many alterations in a check, like more than 3 4 alterations, and even if the signatures are there, you must refer it to the head teller and let head teller call the customer in case the customer is not in front of you. I mean, call the account holder if that account holder is not in front of you, just to make sure that why there are so many alterations and if there is anything suspicious with that. It's always better to keep yourself safe. That is for the alteration. There, when you are sure that the amount in words and digits is okay, date is okay, payee name is okay, there is no alteration on the check is in a perfect condition, and you have checked in the system, the signature also is spot on perfect, then you start processing the check. Start processing the check means in your system will ask you to put the account number, then see the signature, then put the amount, then put the check number, and then you put the date of the check, and then you validate. When you validate and start processing, the system will start processing the check if the amount is within your threshold. Now, every teller, every branch, every bank has its own criteria of limits which has been given to you. Suppose your limit is $10,000 withdrawal single-handedly with your signature, and if that check is below $10,000, your system will just process it and it will get validated and the customer account will get debited. But if it is more than 10,000, then the system will ask for an authorization, and then you take that check and go to the head teller or the operation manager and get their signature on it and get their authorization in the system. They will also authorize it in the system, and they will also check all the details of the check, and will also check the signature of the check in the system, and next to that signature, that person, head teller or operation manager, will also sign on the signature verification that he has also checked the signature and he also verifies it. That verification also is done with the permanent ink, not with the lead ink. You need to check the any special instructions on the check also. In most cases these days, your system will prompt any special instruction. That special instruction can be, most importantly, a stop check instruction and our stolen check instruction. So if there is an instruction, it will pop up in the system, and if you see those instructions that there is a stop check instruction from the account holder or from any other department or from your bank's credit department or any other institute or even from the authorities, it will prompt on your system without intimating the customer or the person standing in front of you. You politely and quietly excuse that person and go to the head teller or your operations manager and inform about that stop instruction. Then they know better how to deal with that customer and how to deal with that person, and then that check will not be paid. Oh, there are other steps to be followed which I will explain in some other course and in some other slide, what to do with those stop check instructions or stolen check instructions, okay, or there can be any other instructions which you really need to take care of these instructions, and don't pay the check without checking all these instructions in the system. Just make sure of all these instructions. Now, when you have processed the check in the system and it has already been verified by your head teller, then you take a copy of the payee, the person who's standing in front of you. If he is not the account holder, then take his valid ID and take a copy of that ID, write these ID details on the back of the check, take his phone number, write that phone number also on the back of the check, and attach the copy of his ID to the check. On the back of the check, attach a copy as well. Then you start taking out the cash for that customer. Keep the check in front of you on the left side of your desk, and then start taking out the money as per the customer's instructions. Whatever denominations the customer wants, as per those instructions you take out they check the cash out and start putting it on the table. Then you start counting this cash in the machine and with your hand, and you start writing it on this kind of specific denomination pattern and slip. In most some banks, this is printed on the back of the check. But if it is not printed, the tellers are normally given a stamp of this performer, a big stamp that you paste that stamp on the back of the check and start writing the denominations which you are giving to the customer. Whatever 100 notes you have given, then you write a total, and 50 and 20, tens, fives and all, and cents, and then you make a total, then you make a subtotal and make sure that the total here is correct, and you count the cash at least two times, count it in the machine and with the hand, and then you put that cash in front of the customer who's standing in front of you, the payee on the deck, and let him count the cash. He himself will also start counting the cash, and he will make sure everything is okay. When he is okay, he is perfectly fine, and he says he has counted all the cash and everything is fine. You double check everything with you, all is okay, and then it's good to go. When he's happy, he leaves, and after that you put the check in the voucher tray, and then you attend the other customer. Don't attend the other customer and don't rush into the transaction, because this is a very risky transaction. And regarding the fake checks, these days the banks have put a lot of controls in place. As soon as you process the check in the system, with the check number, system will detect and it will pull out all the information. Mostly the fake checks are really difficult these days to come to the bank. But still, if you have little doubt about the originality of the check, you can always put the check in the ultraviolet ray machine which you have for checking the original notes. You will find a lot of watermarks, like there are a lot of watermarks in the banknotes, which I explained in my previous slides. There are a lot of watermarks inside the check which each and every bank puts for their checks. So these watermarks will show when you will put that check under the ultraviolet light. So it will be a proof that this check is original. So if you have some doubt about the originality of the check, you just put this check under the ultraviolet light and make sure that this check is original and there is no problem with it. This is pretty much all with the cash withdrawal, and I'm sure you understood how the cash withdrawal is done. If there is any question or concerns, you can always put comment and I will reply you back with your questions. Thank you very much. Have a good day.